Welcome back, everybody. Hello, welcome back to the Whiskey Jedi. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Week 2. We made it 2 weeks in a row, everybody. Super excited to be back here. Got a lot to talk about tonight. A lot of cool things to talk about tonight. As you can see, I'm trying something out over here on what is my left, but I guess your left too, technically watching on the screen. Both our lefts. Kind of a rundown of what we're going to be discussing tonight. I'm trying some things out. I've always loved the idea of doing a rundown style overlay like that, and I've never had the opportunity to do it. And so why not try it here? And I'm really excited. It's going to morph. I mentioned it last week when I brought the show back. I'm in the process of trying to find ways of how I want the show to look. I have an idea in my head. I'm trying to put it to paper, and it's probably going to take a couple tries. Excuse me. But that's one of the ideas that I have that could possibly be built on. So I'm super excited. It looks good so far. So yeah, a lot of fun things to talk about tonight. We're getting into some news. There's some news things that have kind of come out over the recent week. And honestly, over the past couple of days, actually. There's a couple movies that I watched that I definitely want to talk about. The most being Hitman on Netflix with Glen Powell. The main topic for this evening is kind of based around him in general. It's the main question of the show of whether or not Glen Powell is a bona fide movie star. Movie stars don't really exist anymore. The era of that title seems to be over, but is Glen Powell everything a movie star was, is, and can be? So we're going to be diving into that a little bit later on in the show as well. So as for what I'm drinking tonight, I am drinking Taos Lightning, some rye whiskey. I have done this on the show before. It's been a little bit. This is out of New Mexico, and I think I mentioned this on the show when I did it, but this was gifted to me by my parents. They were on a road trip, and they brought it back with them. They drove from here to New Mexico and then flew back. So they did a road trip through, Arizona and stuff like that. And they brought this back for me. So I'm trying it tonight. I'm retrying it tonight, I should say. Sipping, as I mentioned on last week's show, I'm going to break down / review / try whiskey once a month. And that is coming up. That is coming up here very, very shortly. I'm either going to do it next week or the week after. We have some things planned in the next coming weeks, so I kind of got to time it right with everything going on. But yeah, so Taos Lightning straight rye whiskey tonight. Governor's Reserve Taos Lightning, I should say, out of New Mexico. So definitely recommend it. It's a very, very well done rye whiskey. John Pierce, what's up, man? Thank you so much for joining me. Appreciate it. Booze, Acolyte, and Whiskey Jedi. Woo woo. Yeah. Hey, up top, just for everyone watching. I have not watched tonight's episode of The Acolyte just yet. I plan on doing that as soon as this show is over. I was going to do this episode last night, but we had a pipe burst in our backyard yesterday, and I just didn't want to do a show, if I'm being honest. I was out in the backyard for a couple hours fixing a broken pipe, a drainage pipe, a sprinkler pipe, excuse me. Had to dig, and I didn't want to do a show. So I'm doing it tonight. Have not watched The Acolyte just yet, but I will be getting to that shortly after this is over. And I'm really excited to do so because I'm loving everything from that show so far. I really, really am enjoying it. Master Soul is an absolute vibe. Amanda Stenberg, is absolutely knocking it out of the park with 2 different roles. They have been fantastic, and I'm really, really intrigued by new Star Wars. And what I mean by that is the new era, right? I'm loving the experience of seeing brand new unexplored Star Wars. It's a lot of fun. So I'm excited to see episode 3 and see what it's all about as we dive more into that story. So yeah, Booze, it was not fun. At least it was outside, but unfortunately it was hot. And I had to leave work early, which was unfortunate. So, but everything is good now. It's all fixed. We're good to go. Water's back on. Everything is good to go. All right, let's dive into our first topic of the evening. And this Sunday, one of the biggest shows makes its return for its second season. The House of the Dragon is returning on Max this Sunday. The Game of Thrones prequel for its second season. Really, really excited to dive back into these characters, dive back into this world. And I'm looking forward to getting back into the fold with these characters. I did want to say, kind of like early reactions have been coming out about the show. I haven't looked into them too much. I actually have not watched a single trailer for this. I don't need to. I'm watching the show either way. I definitely have, even before I made the vow to basically not watch trailers. I've never really watched, uh, second, third, fourth seasons of television unless it's something like Mandalorian or Loki, anything like that that just kind of has like a tentpole franchise name to it. But something like House of the Dragon, or I won't watch The Last of Us. I won't watch the trailer to Fallout. I didn't watch the ones to like Reacher and Outer Range and all this stuff that I've been watching. There's no need for it. Like, I'm already in. My interest has been piqued already. Um, I I think that, when it comes to House of the Dragon, they left us on such like it was like a cliffhanger, but it wasn't a cliffhanger, that I'm already like, okay, how like I'm in, I'm sold, I'm ready to dive back into the stories with these characters. What do these characters do next? Because we were left, spoiler alert for those who have not seen the first season. I apologize, but it's been out for 2 years now. Um Rhaenyra's son was killed. See ya. Peace. And war has started. The fight for the crown is on, and I'm super, super excited to see what these characters do. I know that the Dance of Dragons is coming. I don't know book specifics when it comes to Game of Thrones. I have not read them. I have not looked into them. Even during the time of Game of Thrones, I did no research whatsoever on the Dance of the Dragons. I know that it was mentioned in the Game of Thrones. I think Arya was the one who was talking about it. But outside of that, I am completely just a blank canvas when it comes to this. And that leaves me super excited. Even the stuff that happened in Game of Thrones where Arya was mentioning it, I don't remember the specifics of her mentioning it. It was totally in passing because at the time, it was early on in the show, probably within the first like 2, 3, 4 seasons. So the first half of that series, that's a long time ago. I don't remember which names she mentioned of maybe who died or who didn't, which dragons were involved, etc. All I know is that this series is telling that story. Um, and we obviously know now who's involved after experiencing the first season. It's Team Black versus Team Green. You have Rhaenyra, you have Daemon, you have their children, you have the cousins, and then you have everything going on with Allison and her children and the king and just everything going on there. So I'm really looking forward to seeing these characters get back to it. It's going to be a much different watch this time around because the first season was trying to fill us in on so much information. There was time jumps. There were, Rhaenyra and Allison were friends and they weren't. And we were trying to get back to being friends. And then everything happened with their children. And so now that the groundwork has been laid, the blueprint is there. Now we're full-fledged into the story. They're not reuniting whatsoever. It's full-on revenge versus trying to survive. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how the political game is played with these characters outside of the action with the dragons. Like the dragons are the heavy hitters. They're the last end result, right? Like if and I don't know how it's going to happen. I don't know what trailers have shown, but if need be, Team Black can just completely wipe them out because they have more dragons. But how is the political side of it played? Because that's kind of what Game of Thrones has been about for the last ever since we've seen it on screen. So even if you don't have the power, which we saw with Daenerys, right? She had the dragons, she had the army. That doesn't always mean you're coming out on top. And I'm not saying that the Targaryens won't come out on top, but Team Green definitely have some stuff up their sleeves, like no doubt. I will not put anything past Alicent or her father. Her son is on the throne, and they have a few dragons. They may not have a lot, but they have a few, which a few is better than none. So um, I'm just excited to get this stuff back because I remember experiencing House of the Dragon for the first time and really being wowed by the show. Coming after Game of Thrones season 8, which coincidentally, I don't know why. I don't know if it's because of certain clips popping back up, because House of the Dragon is coming, but I've been much more interested now in revisiting Game of Thrones season 8 than ever before. Like I'm interested in going back and watching it because I've only ever watched it the one time when it came out, and we all know how that went for the majority of people. I was one of those. I'm interested in going back and watching it now that I've had a few years to kind of cool down, not think about it. Now that we have House of the Dragon, my Game of Thrones peak has kind of been, heightened a little bit. Interest has been heightened a little bit, I should say. Um, and not only am I excited for House of the Dragon, but I'm also excited for the franchise. I think there's a lot of possibilities. We know at the moment that there's 2 more spinoffs coming um, outside of this show, which anybody in the chat can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they said that they want to take House of the Dragon at least 4 seasons. I believe. I know it wasn't very long. It could be 3 seasons. But I'm pretty sure it was 4, which is totally fine. Like 4 seasons of 8 episodes is totally fine with me, or 10 episodes if that's what they do. That's awesome. I love that. That's enough television for me, especially a Game of Thrones story. And knowing kind of like the basics of where they want to finish this because it's such a specific story in the timeline. But we know that Duncan and Egg is coming, which is another spinoff, a completely different type of story. And then last year, or maybe it was earlier this year, the Aegon the Conqueror spinoff was also announced, which is the one that I want to see. But I'm also a non-book Game of Thrones fan. That story just sounds the most interesting to me. Seeing Aegon the Conqueror conquer Westeros with his 2 sister wives, and the casting possibilities for that are pretty incredible. I put my castings out there for that one, and maybe that'll come back up at some point. But yeah, so like right now, with how well House of the Dragon is doing, the Game of Thrones franchise is in a much better place than it was 4 years ago. God, when was season 8? It had to have been at least, right? I think because I remember it being around the Avengers movies. 2019. Yeah. So it ended just a few weeks after we saw Endgame. God, what just a ball buster this show was this season. 6 episodes for a final season of Game of Thrones. When everything else before it was at least 7 for season 7, which they kind of botched as well. But everything beforehand, season 6 had 10. Season 5 had 10. Like, God, what a botched ending. So unfortunate. So they've gotten past that. Like, they have come around. They have figured it out. They have gotten a lot of fans back on board. And I remember watching the House of the Dragon for the first time and really being wowed by what they were doing. It was really well done storytelling. And I say that because they did a lot of time jumps, and they also had a number of actors play the same characters, right? We had 2 Rhaenyras, we had 2 Alicents, multiple time jumps of them being kids, them not having kids, and then them having kids. The king eventually passing, someone else taking over the throne. It was really well done for how much they actually had to tackle. Now we're in the thick of it, so I have high hopes for what they're going to do with season 2. I really do. If they're able to build off of season 1 and tell just as an impactful and tight story as they were with season 1, I think that it can be as big of a show on television as there is right now. Because Game of Thrones is still a very viable name. And I think House of the Dragons really put themselves out there. And I think when it didn't have it was never labeled as Game of Thrones House of the Dragon. Um, and for them to get as much viewership and to become as popular and to have as many people talk and watch as they did when they first debuted after everything that happened with Game of Thrones really does say something. So kudos to the creators, kudos to everyone involved. I'm really excited to see what you do with season 2, and I have no doubt a lot of people else are as well. And I hope it's as good. I really do. And I think it needs to be good. It can't. We can't just have like that one hit wonder where season 1 was good and everything else is kind of eh. Especially when you're talking about the Targaryens. Like, this is a very important story. You're dealing with the Targaryens. You're dealing with the house, not the house. You're dealing with the Dance of the Dragons, and everything that kind of sets up what we see in the future with Game of Thrones. I'm sure there's going to be something in between, but this is kind of setting up what we're eventually going to see, like the landscape of Westeros in Game of Thrones. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Big G, what's up? Thank you for joining. Where do we think they'll end the season? I don't know, because I mentioned this, and I don't know if you were here, but I'm not a book reader. I didn't read the book, so I don't know the specifics. I would say we probably see Dance of the Dragons in this season, but I could be wrong. Because I kind of feel like Dance of the Dragons is going to be like an end game. It's like the final thing we're going to see before. And then obviously you see everything kind of pick themselves back up and what do they do next. But I feel like you can't do Dance of the Dragons and then continue on for like 2 seasons. But I mean, maybe there's enough story there. I mean, it just feels like it feels like a lot of people are going to die in the Dance of the Dragons. So I don't see them doing it now. I feel like this season is going to be the real major setup. Yes, yeah, I'm with you. Big G, I don't think they'll get to the end of the war this season. I agree. Because I would also feel shortchanged. And that was a big problem with Game of Thrones. It was hardcore shortchanged. And so I think they've learned their lesson. And not that you always want to do this, but with this, probably milk it a little bit. Really milk it. Try to put as much as you can in there before you get to kind of like the big bang. But I could be wrong. I mean, like I said up top, I know that they announced how long they think this show will go, and it was either 3 or 4 seasons. I think it was 4, but I could be wrong. But either way, I'm looking forward to it. I'll be there watching. I'm excited for it, and I can't wait to see all that war between these characters. Team Black versus Team Green. I'm Team Black all the way. I mean, those green little pricks, sleazy little pricks that they are. Can't wait to see them all bite the dust hard. I want to see them get their heads taken off by dragons and everything. Just like the most vicious deaths you can see. It'd be great. Can't wait to see it. I'm sure I'll be talking about it here weekly too. I'll kind of do like little mini recaps on the episodes after I watch them on Sunday evenings. So you'll see a weekly kind of discussion here on the show as well. And then I'm sure I mentioned this last week, but I'll probably end up doing stuff on TikTok too. Reviews. I did it for the Acolyte last week. And I post those to Instagram. I've been trying to keep up on YouTube, but YouTube is just so hard because YouTube Shorts are so limited. It's only 60 seconds, and that's so hard to fit everything into a 60-second video. So if you're interested, Instagram and TikTok, you can follow me. I do kind of episode reviews like that over there, among many other things. I love doing stuff over there. It's a lot of fun. Shorter content, and it's very easy for me to make, and I have a good time doing it. So check it out there. Big G, last thing on House of Dragon, because I read the book, I got some ideas where they can end season 2. Okay, cool. So I'm going to ride with you. I think the war will lead into next season. I think we'll continue seeing it until season 3, which I'm all for. Just give us something, right? Don't be like an entire lead up and not give us anything. That's all I wish. All right, sticking with TV, next topic here is another major show, which June is like the best television month I think we have ever seen. We have The Acolyte, we have House of the Dragon season 2, we have The Boys season 4, and then we have The Bear season 3, which we will get to when that comes out eventually at the end of the month. But next show up on the docket will be The Boys season 4, and this is also going to be a discussion about season 4 and season 5 because we got a bunch of information today, coincidentally, about season 4 and where they'll be taking season 5. Super, super excited to get back with these characters. This is easily one of the best shows on television because it gives no Fs. It gives no Fs, and I love it. I've always been such a big Carl Urban fan. I love a lot of stuff he does. I love him as Bones in Star Trek. I think that he was just a perfect choice for Dredd, and I'm so bummed we never got a sequel to that. I think he's going to be a great Johnny Cage for Mortal Kombat. Now, whether or not the movie is good, we will see. And I think he is just a perfectly casted actor for Butcher. And it feels like he's just having a blast. I love how unhinged the character is sometimes. And Carl Urban plays it to an absolute perfection. But yeah, so we got some information today regarding this season as well as next season. The biggest being that season 5 will be the final season. Season 5 will finish out this story, and it's important to note. I know that there's like a boys universe going on, right? We have Gen V, which I definitely recommend watching. We have seen in photos that characters from that show will be in this season. It's not a must watch, but you should watch it because it does connect, and it is a really good show to watch. Like it's a very extremely unhinged version of college students who have superpowers. So I definitely recommend watching Gen V if you have not. But anyway, the creator of The Boys, and I'm pulling up his name now. I have it off the tip of my tongue, but I want to make sure I get it right. Eric Kripke. There we go. Eric Kripke. He's been kind of like dropping quotes and doing interviews. They're obviously doing press for season 4 because it is coming very, very soon. I believe it comes out next week as well. He had mentioned how season 5 of this show is going to be the final because this story is all about an eventual meetup with Butcher and Homelander, like a cataclysmic event. He said there's other corners of the universe to explore, but this particular story is Homelander and Butcher crashing into each other, which we've seen, right? Like we've seen them go head to head before in this series, but they've never really fully like gone at it. It's always kind of been like, I'm doing this over here, I'm doing this over here. Okay, we're gonna battle it out a little bit, and then we move on. There's never really been like a full-on like war between the two of them where everything finally comes to a head. That's what season 5 is going to be all about. And in the interview, he talked about how like this specific story, like it's going to have a conclusion. We're going to see a conclusion to the characters of Homelander and Butcher by the end of this series. And he made sure to mention that doesn't mean we can't see the characters in other spinoffs, but more than likely those spinoffs will probably take place prior to the events of The Boys, because this series is kind of all about an ending of Homelander and Butcher in this story of these characters. And like once we reach that finish line, that's it. Like that's the finish line. And I appreciate that because we see a lot with stories, whether it be Star Wars television, whether it be, movies we've seen throughout the years or anything else. There's sometimes doors left open to see characters in the future, right? in a spinoff, another series, an appearance, whatever. It sounds like, and I'm taking all of this with a grain of salt. I'm just discussing it because it's fun. But it does sound like Kripke, who is, creating and show running the show, that he wants season 5 of The Boys to essentially be the end of these characters. And I don't mean the end in death. Obviously, there's going to be death. That's The Boys is all about death and destruction and blood splatters and everything. It's just all about that. But I mean the end of the characters, that when we reach that final point, with Butcher and the Boys, Homelander and the Seven, or whoever else, that could be like the final time we see them at that point. Not to say we couldn't see them earlier in the timeline, or something else going on in the similar timeline and then make an appearance. But their stories will be finished, which I'm okay with. I think 5 seasons of television is a really strong amount of TV, especially at the pace The Boys has been going. It's been going at a supersonic pace ever since it debuted. Ever since the first like 2 minutes of that show, when I'm forgetting the name of the character, but when the speedster ran through the girlfriend, Howie's girlfriend, like, and we saw blood splatter, like, boom, show's on, and it has not stopped. It has not stopped once, and I think they're going to continue, and they're going to go all out. And A-Train, thank you, Booze. I don't know why I wanted to say Ace. I kept wanting to say Ace, but that's why I didn't say anything. A-Train, thank you. And yeah, so I think them having like a goal, like an end game of where they want to finish this off is perfect, because we do see a lot where a lot of television runs itself into the ground because they want to go too long, and they want to, milk it and tell as much as they can. But recently, we've been seeing a lot of great television, like very, very strong television, just do shorter seasons, or not seasons, shorter series, excuse me. Like The Last of Us is an example. I know it's based off of a game, but they could easily milk that for as long as they really wanted to and tell different stories within that story. But they came out and said that if we reach a season 4, awesome, but that'll be the last. That's cool. I don't need 7, 8, 9 seasons of television. A great example of something going way too far was Arrow or The Flash. Those series went way too long, and they ran themselves into the ground because, one, they told all the stories they could tell, and 2, they couldn't do anything new with the characters. And I think the pace that The Boys has been going, while I do think they can probably do a lot, I am totally okay with them having an idea of where this story ends and it being 5 seasons. That's 5 seasons of at least 8 episodes. That's a lot. That's a lot. Put that in movie form. I always try to remind people that, sometimes I talk to a lot of like just my basic friends who are watching television or movies, people that aren't in like the know or listen to this stuff on a regular basis. They get so bummed out when like a season is only 6 episodes or 8 episodes. And I tell them, I'm like, okay, well, think about it. If you're watching a series of 8 episodes, and let's put Mandalorian out there, for example. If you're watching The Mandalorian and the season is 8 episodes, and those episodes are 30 to 40 minutes, combine all of that together, just put it all together. You're watching 2 movies. Those are 2 2-hour movies of 4 episodes each. That's a lot. But we don't ever complain about getting a movie every 2 years or a movie every 3 years, right? Most big movies are every 3 years now. So we have to keep that in mind. And I think The Boys, of telling 5 seasons of 8 episodes each, that's a lot of television, a lot of storytelling. A lot of time with these characters has been spent. And there's only so much time we can spend with them. Homelander can only get away for so long. He can only get away for so long. The Butcher and the Boys can only live for so long through all of this stuff. So I'm okay with it. And I'm looking forward to what season 4 is all about. I mentioned it. I have not watched trailers. Or I think I might have watched the initial teaser trailer because I was able to see Jeffrey Dean Morgan in it, which is really cool. But I haven't seen anything else outside of that. Like, it was a very short, like 30-second trailer or something. We were left off on a very eerie note, right? Homelander's son has joined his side. That's a big deal. Homelander murdered someone in public, so he's going to trial. So I'm just curious on where it goes, especially after everything we learned in Gen V. And Andy, I love your comment. I can't not read the title of Gen V as Gen 5. I agree. But Gen V put this space, this universe in a very interesting space and a very interesting spot to tell stories. And that's why I recommend Gen V, because it is leading it. That show leads into The Boys, but you don't need to watch it to continue on with The Boys. I just really recommend it because it's a really good kind of like precursor to everything that's going to be happening. And you get to know some of those characters that we're going to be seeing in this season. So definitely check out the Gen V. It's on Prime, just as The Boys is. But yeah, that series will be coming out. And just as I mentioned with House of the Dragon, I will definitely be talking about it here. And I'm pretty sure they drop these weekly. They dropped the first season as a full bunch, but because the show is so popular, why not reach as long as you possibly can? They'll probably drop like 2 episodes to start, 2 or 3, and then the rest from there will be weekly. So I'll be talking about it here, just as I will be House of the Dragon, and just as I will be on the Acolyte. So, all right, let's move on. Let's get into some movie stuff. I'm gonna check my phone just real quick here. And all right, good to go. We're going to talk about some movie stuff here, and we're going to get into nothing that I believe, but something that I just want to talk about. Apparently, and this is really to no surprise, none at all. But Robert Downey Jr. was recently quoted because he was on Variety's Actors on Actors. He was recently quoted saying that he is open to the idea of returning as Iron Man because the character is ingrained in him. He is the character, and it just lives within inside him. And of course, tabloids ran with it, saying that Robert Downey Jr. would return as Iron Man. Is he going to return as Iron Man? Secret Wars is coming. The multiverse is open. Will Tony Stark be revived? That's a tricky question. I think there's a 2-part to that answer. One, I don't think he's going to be revived. I don't think we're going to be seeing the same exact Tony Stark that we saw in our MCU timeline. I think that character is finished. I think that character is gone. He served his purpose. I mean, he saved the galaxy. He saved the universe. He saved everything. He defeated Thanos. And I think it would be a huge injustice if you brought that exact character back. A huge injustice. That specific character, I should say, our MCU version of Tony Stark. Now, the other side of this is that will he return in a alternate version form? I don't know about you guys, but I kind of always expected this to happen. I never really saw Secret Wars or the battle with Kang or whatever is going to be happening without Iron Man. I never really saw Avengers. I'll say Avengers 6. Because it would be the Kang Dynasty and then Secret Wars, which I don't know if those titles are going to stick anymore. But for the sake of the argument, I never saw Secret Wars without Iron Man. I never saw Secret Wars without Cap. Never. I think they're appearing. Now the Cap thing is different because he is alive. He's just alive in the past. That's a whole different conversation. But yeah, I never really saw those stories happening without those two characters because they are the universe. Now, conversations on whether or not Black Widow is going to appear, I don't know. Some other characters that we haven't seen, I don't know. But regarding Iron Man and Tony Stark and Robert Downey Jr., if they were to ever do it, the time is now because he is only getting older. And there is only so much time to believe that a 60-year-old plus character could be in that suit fighting bad guys. I don't care how protective that armor is. And if you know the story of Secret Wars, it just makes sense. It does. I think Secret Wars is a perfect place to bring him back. I don't think it would be in like a starring made major role. I think he would appear very similar to how all of the dusted characters appeared in Endgame. Towards the end of the movie, in the big fight, one last hoorah, goodbye. This is my final time as the character. But in no form do I think that they're going to bring him back to be a full-fledged character in this universe. Iron Man's time leading and being the central figure is over, just as Cap's is. They are part of the original Avengers squad. They are part of the original story of the Infinity Saga, the battle with Thanos. That time is over. It's going to be great to see him on screen again. And anybody who argues that it's dumb or wouldn't make sense, first of all, we haven't seen it yet. We don't know how it's going to happen and if it's going to happen. And two, you're telling me that we've spent 10 plus years with this character, loving every second of him on screen, and you wouldn't enjoy 5 or 10 minutes of spending time with him again? Come on. Come on. And think about it. In this time era of the MCU, we're kind of in this like weird space where the next Avengers hasn't really happened yet. Like the next team hasn't really like been formed. There's been no one to collect them, like bring them together. Everyone's like super spread out. Falcon's doing his thing. Shang-Chi's doing his thing. Captain Marvel's out in the cosmos. I think that would be a perfect opportunity to have someone like Iron Man or someone like Cap, the leaders, come together and tell these characters or have these characters be like, Earth is always going to need you. It doesn't matter who, but Earth is always going to need you. And what's cool about this, and for people who read the comics or followed the Avengers, like maybe cartoons or anything like that, the Avengers roster was always massive. It was always a rotating roster, right? Like every major MCU character or every major Marvel character had a spot on the Avengers roster. Luke Cage, Spider-Man, Captain America, Black Panther, Doctor Strange. They may not have been in every fight, but they were part of the Avengers. Up until this point, we've only seen a specifically picked Avengers squad come together. The first two movies, right? The first Avengers and Age of Ultron, it was a core group. We saw Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver join the group. At the end of Age of Ultron, it was a core group that was picked by Cap and Black Widow. And then, because the universe was changing and people were going everywhere and characters were dying and stories were taking us here and there, Infinity War saw that core group, but then expanded because of everything happening. But then a bunch of characters were killed. Dusted, right? They were dusted. They were gone. So that then left the Avengers to regroup, and Tony Stark retired, left. Black Widow tried to keep everything together, but the Avengers broke up. They were done. Characters went everywhere. Rocket was out in the cosmos. Rhodey was doing his thing. Captain Marvel was out in the cosmos. Okoye was running Wakanda because T'Challa was gone. So ever since Infinity War, we have not seen the Avengers come back together. They've been gone. And it's been years, right? I'm looking at the date. It's been 5 years. Multiple movies and stories have been told with no Avengers coming back together. Secret Wars is going to bring them back together. And what an opportunity to have characters like Iron Man and Cap tell these characters, everyone has their own lives. Everyone has their own worlds they need to protect. But Earth's mightiest heroes need to live on. There needs to be a group to protect everyone. And we're going to see the Spider-Mans and the She-Hulks and the Doctor Stranges, the Shang-Chis, the Shuri Black Panthers. We're going to see all those characters come together. And we're going to have a massive roster of Avengers. Massive roster of Avengers. Captain Marvel. Miss Marvel will be a young Avenger. Photon. And I think eventually what we will see is Avengers movies where there's a rotating roster, where it's not going to be a core group like we saw in previous Avengers movies. We're going to be able to see a story where it's this Avengers, this group of Avengers, right? But then maybe 2 years after, it's going to be an Avengers movie where this specific story, because of everything happening in the universe, is pulling these characters together. Because now the universe has been expanded so much. There are so many characters, whereas I'll say 8 years ago, there was such an amount of characters going on. Now there's characters in every corner of the galaxy. We can pull them together for specific stories, just like the comic books, just like the cartoons, which is super, super cool. That is super cool. We've always had questions of like, the greatest example was, okay, why wasn't Thor or Hulk in Civil War? Well, first of all, they're too damn powerful. Second of all, they were off doing Thor Ragnarok. That's going to be happening in future MCU movies when the Avengers movies come back into stories. And that is super, super exciting. We're not going to have to wait 5 years for an Avengers movie for this cataclysmic event to happen. We're going to see someone attacking Earth or a big baddie happen where an Avengers group comes together to fight that bad guy. And that is super cool. That's really, really cool. And I know it's been, a long road to get here. I know there's been a lot of people, complaining about Marvel and their storytelling and how it's kind of been all over the place. And I've had my fair share of kind of disappointment. But, sophomore seasons are always a little bit of slumpy. It happens. They're trying to get to a specific story and it's taking time. It took 4 years to get to the first Avengers movie. And that was only with 5-6 characters. Three individual movies. Well, there was 2 Iron Mans, a Captain America, and a Thor. Now, Shuri's Black Panther, Doctor Strange, Shang-Chi, Moon Knight, Kate Bishop, Captain Marvel, a new Captain America. I mean, I could go on and on and on. Give it time, people. It's okay. I know it's been frustrating, but it'll all pay off. Trust in Marvel. Trust in Marvel. How have they not gained our trust? Kevin Feige has gained our trust. Okay? So to answer the original question of whether or not I would be okay with Tony Stark returning, I would be to a certain capacity, obviously. And no, I do not think it would be returning to return. I don't think he's coming back from the dead. This is my opinion. I do not think he's coming back from the dead. All right, let's move on. Sticking with movies, let's get to our main topic of the evening. I recently watched the biggest movie on Netflix at the moment. It has an amazing score across the board. That is Richard Linklater's Hitman movie starring Glen Powell and Adria Arjona. Multiple Glen Powells, I should say. Multiple. Not just those 6 you see on screen. Although those are the 6 most notable we see from the movie. So I'm gonna do this in 2 parts. I'm gonna talk about the movie. I'm not gonna spend too much time on the movie because I do want to talk about. But I want to talk about the question that I have here: is Glen Powell an actual old school true movie star? Which we'll get to here in just a second. As far as Hitman goes, I thoroughly enjoyed this film. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I think Richard Linklater was a really, really good choice in directing this. I know that he and Glen Powell wrote the script. It's based on a true story. All of it is not true. They even say at the very end that the ending is fake. They made that up for the sake of the film, which is totally okay. But the basis of the story is true, which is really, really exciting. So the idea of this movie, and spoilers do follow. Um, Glen Powell plays a psychology professor. I think it's psychology. He plays a professor at a college, and he also moonlights as a undercover hitman for the New Orleans Police Department. He goes in, he sets up people who are hiring a hitman to kill someone. It's the sting operation, and then once he gets those people to voice what they are doing, the police arrest them. And in walks a beautiful young woman played by Adria Arjona, and his tables are turned. Uh, his life is pretty much flipped upside down, and it's a very, very enjoyable story. It was told in a very enjoyable way. Um, I loved. I thought Glen Powell and Adria Arjona had incredible chemistry with each other. The movie really, really does hinder on that a lot. It's kind of like the main, it has to, that has to work for this to work. Um, but ultimately, the movie is completely dependent on Glen Powell and his capability to not only hold the screen as the main character, but also as the multiple characters he's playing. And I thought he did an incredible job. An incredible job. As I mentioned, I thought Richard Linklater was a really good choice in directing. It fit his style very, very well. I'm sorry, my wrist is going crazy because my phone is going off. So I'm getting just vibrations on my phone, um, or my watch, I should say. But yeah, I thought it was a really fun, comedic, very, very well done comedy. Uh, Not a ton of action. Actually, not really any. It's much more focused on the story, which I'm okay with because it's that specific of a story. I really liked it. Um, it's all about the characters and all about their relationships, and I thought that was very well done. I thought the development of Glen Powell and his character, and the multiple characters we saw, was very well done. And Andy, I see you mentioned the ending. The ending was definitely, it caught me off guard, I will say. Um, and again, spoilers. Glen Powell's character and Adria Arjona's character essentially get away with murder. They're being blackmailed by a fellow cop who figured out their investigation, or not their investigation, figured out what they are doing, everything behind their kind of secrecy of dating, and how Glen Powell is dating her with one of his aliases. Um, the ending caught me off guard. It's not my favorite part of the movie. I didn't hate it. It just caught me off guard that they got away with it. Especially for the character of Gary. Gary Johnson is the actual main character's name that's played by Glen Powell, who's based on an actual character or person. He unfortunately passed in 2022 before he got to see this being made. But it was definitely out of left field for the character of Gary, but not the character of Ron, which he had completely fallen into. He had become Ron. And I think that's why I'm okay with it. Gary pretty much went away, and Ron had pretty much taken over, which is obviously the untrue parts of this true story. And he had fallen for Adria Arjona. He was being blackmailed by his fellow cop. And because of where he was at in his life, I think that's where it all ended up. As they mentioned in the movie, right? The police department was already kind of at their wits' end with the officer who they killed, or who I should say, who Adria Arjona's character killed. Um, he just helps her get away with it because one, he's in love with her. Two, he really likes their life. And three, if the police found out what happened about their secrecy, about everything that was going on, he would be going to jail. So he really had no choice. But I say that because he was the character of Ron. He wasn't Gary anymore. He was Ron. Um, and so yeah, I thought I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I really, really did. I'm kind of like hit or miss sometimes with Linklater. There's some stuff I like, there's some stuff I don't like, but this I very much liked. And I think I liked it so much because of who was involved. Um, and let's get into that question I have down there. And I want to talk about that in a sec, but I want to briefly mention how much I think Adria Arjona is a star. I think she is really, really good. She plays Bix in Andor, if you recognize her. She's also been in a couple of other movies. She was unfortunately in Morbius, and a couple of other smaller movies. But I think this is like a breakout for her personally. I think it's a total breakout for her. She's already been a name that's been recognizable, but I think she's a very, very good young actress, and she holds her presence alongside Glen Powell very, very well. Um, and yeah, I thought she was a perfect choice for this, like a perfect choice for this. And I'm excited to see what she does next outside of Bix for Andor season 2, obviously. But regarding Glen Powell, so look, this guy has obviously been everywhere over the last couple of years. Uh, Top Gun Maverick, Anyone But You, Hitman. Um, he's been in a lot of stuff, a lot of big, big stuff. Very recognizable. He's in the Twisters this summer. Um, and we've seen this before with a lot of people where Hollywood kind of starts to push certain people out like all at once. And I'm going to stick with some males for a quick second before I get to it. I want to mention a female who I think is actually on the positive side of this. But there's been two men in the past who Hollywood has pushed out at an enormous rate, and it did not work. It just didn't work, and it's super unfortunate because I actually like both of them. Um, I think they're very well actors who have become even better actors since their time of like being in the spotlight. But back in the late 2000s, early 2010s, Hollywood was massively like at a rapid rate pushing out both Taylor Kitsch and Sam Worthington. And it just so happened that they both had movies going on. They had multiple movies going on at the same time. Taylor Kitsch was coming off the success of Friday Night Lights. Sam Worthington had popped up, and Hollywood thought he was the next big it guy, right? He did Terminator. It's the prequel, and I'm forgetting the name of it. Please help me out, chat. But the prequel for Terminator with Christian Bale. Salvation. Salvation. There we go. Terminator Salvation. He also did Avatar, obviously, right? He was in Avatar, so the hit, everyone was like, oh, this is the next guy. He is everything. Taylor Kitsch, after Friday Night Lights, did Battleship. He did Wolverine Origins. He did John Carter. But nothing ever really stuck for both of them. And it's not their fault that everything was just thrown against the wall at once. Unfortunately for them, outside of Sam Worthington's Avatar, none of those other movies I mentioned were well received. None of them. Wolverine Origins, we talked about a number of times over the years, right? John Carter, I love it. I love it to death. But it got panned. It just completely bombed. Big G, Clash of the Titans. Thank you. Sam Worthington and Clash of the Titans as well. So that's another one to include. Clash of the Titans for Sam Worthington. I actually secretly like Clash of the Titans. I think it's a fun ride, but no, not really, just not well received. Battleship. I think Battleship is a really fun time. Again, just suspending your belief for a Battleship movie, and it's just a nice ride. But again, at the box office and with critics, bombed. Terminator Salvation, not well received. And so we can compare Glen Powell to those two guys. The only difference is Glen Powell, one, has been in very well received projects, and two, he has been incredible in them. I'm not saying like a superstar level, right? Like a DiCaprio or a Bale or a Damon or anything like that. But he is currently at a level where he can reach that because we've seen multiple sides of him. Actually, I'm not going to say DiCaprio. I'm not going to say Bale. Damon, yes, but I will say one name that I think he is very similar to in path. That's Brad Pitt. He is on a current path that is very similar to a Brad Pitt. And I say that because I think currently, I think Glen Powell is the movie superstar. I think he is the definition of a star, a movie star, because movie stars don't exist anymore. And I have my two favorite actors, Jake Gyllenhaal, Ryan Gosling. They're my two favorite actors on the planet. They're not movie stars. Here's why. They don't draw people in. Some stuff they do. Some stuff they do. But a great example of some of either Gosling or Gyllenhaal not drawing people in is Blade Runner 2049. Gosling was in it. The movie was incredibly received. It did not do well at the box office. And it's a bummer. Like, it's a bummer. It sucks because they're my favorite. They're my guys. But I don't think they have reached movie star status because they don't have a draw with the average movie-going audience. Glen Powell currently has that. Because of his success with Top Gun Maverick, because of the massive, insane success of Anyone But You, and now because of Hitman on Netflix, which I think a lot of people are going to see and a lot of people are going to like, the dude can clearly act. He can clearly act in a number of different situations: romance, action, comedy. He has it all. He has it all. That's why I compare him to Brad Pitt. He is very similar in direction to what Brad Pitt was in the early 2000s. And I'm for it. I really am, because we don't have movie stars anymore. There's so many people that I could name that I love, but we just don't. They're not movie stars. Gyllenhaal, Gosling, Daniel Craig wasn't even really a movie star because of Bond. I mean, I'm blanking on actor names. James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender. They're not movie stars. They're incredible actors, but they're not movie stars. I think Glen Powell is on his way to being the return of an actual movie star, which I love and I'm all for. I'm all for. The dude's got it. He really does. And I'm surprised that he does have it, because I remember seeing him in Expendables 3. He played one of the young guns. Gio mentioned in the chat. What's up, Gio? How you doing, man? He was in a small role in Dark Knight Rises. So he's kind of just been around, right? Top Gun Maverick was kind of like the thing for him. Then Anyone But You. Now Hitman, where he developed it. And then we're going to be seeing him later on this year in Twisters. And if Twisters is a hit, which I think Twisters could shock a lot of people, I really do. I think Twisters could shock a lot of people. If he is good and the movie's decently received and the movie makes a ton of money, the dude is 4 for 4 in his last 4. That's a big deal. That's a really, really big deal. So I think he is someone to look out for over the next few years. He has currently surpassed what both Taylor Kitsch and Sam Worthington were able to do in their early careers when they were pushed out. Unfortunately, they just were not in good movies. Glen Powell has been. So that's a good sign. It's a really good sign. It's either he's picking his projects correctly or the projects he's doing are just doing well. Either way, Glen Powell is currently crushing it, and I'm all for it because I really do like him. I have no complaints against him. I think he's an enjoyable time. I think he's a good actor. I think he's a fun actor. I think he really does command the screen very well, and he is a chameleon when it comes to characters. Literally, he played like 8 different hitman in this movie. Different voices, styles of movement, accents, just everything. And the dude crushed it. So yeah, I'm all for him being a true old school classic movie star. and we'll keep an eye on it because we're going to talk about Twisters eventually in the summer, and I'm excited to see it, see what it's all about. Um, so yeah, I'm curious on where he goes next and if he's picked up by some superhero universe. I know that he said in the past that he's not interested in it, but I have no doubt that he would probably jump at something. I mean, there's two options that scream at me when it comes to both DC and Marvel. He would be an incredible Booster Gold, an incredible Booster Gold, like bona fide perfect Booster Gold. But on the flip side, he would also be a perfectly casted Cyclops. I would love to see him as Cyclops. I think he'd be great. He clearly has the ability to control and lead, which is what you need with a Cyclops character. And I think he would be capable, more than capable of doing that. So, Big G, movie stars used to be that you would go to see the movie just because they were in it. I 100% agree with you, which is why I mentioned Brad Pitt. And I think Glen Powell in about a year or two could very well be that. I think 100% Glen Powell could be that. And we're going to keep an eye on it. Geo, how much the marketing is to blame for 2049, considering how Dune did at the box office? That's an interesting question. I don't think marketing had to do a ton with it. I think it was the state of movies at that time. Because remember, the first Dune didn't do very well either. The second Dune did. The second Dune crushed it. The first Dune didn't really do very well. It was still a Denis Villeneuve movie, right? There were tons of names in that. I think it was just the state, right? We were in 2019 or 2018, excuse me. We were just in a state of really superhero stuff, specific style of movies that people wanted to see, and people didn't want to see an original, slower, long sci-fi movie. As much as I loved it because I think it's a perfect film, the mainstream audience did not want to see that. They didn't care for it. But now they do. If that movie would come out now, if Blade Runner 2049 would have came out now, it would have made a bunch of money. John, was there someone else you were going to mention, female actress? Yes. So I compared Glen Powell to Brad Pitt. Another person I wanted to compare him to that was a female that we saw a recent rise of over the last decade was Jennifer Lawrence. We saw Jennifer Lawrence, and I'm not saying Glen Powell is like an Oscar-worthy actor. He could very well get there. We don't know. But we saw Jennifer Lawrence everywhere for like 5 straight years. She was in a movie. I'd have to go back and look, but I think she was in a movie for like 8 straight years or something. She was literally everywhere on the planet. Hunger Games, Passengers. She was in her Oscar movie, the Bone movie. I'm just gonna look up her filmography. Hold on, it's gonna bother me now. Winter's Bone, though. Reds are not. So let's go back. So starting in 2011, which is or 2010, when Winter's Bone came out, you had Winter's Bone in 2010. You had X-Men First Class in 2011, Hunger Games in 2012, and Silver Linings Playbook in 2012, as well as House of the End of the Street in 2012. 3 movies in 2012. Catching Fire in 13 with American Hustle in 13. X-Men The Days of Future Past, Serena, and Mockingjay Part 1 all in 2014. Mockingjay Part 2 and Joy in 2015. X-Men Apocalypse and Passengers in 2016. Mother in 2017. Red Sparrow in 2018. X-Men Dark Phoenix in 2019. And then she kind of took a little bit of a break, and we've seen her over the last couple of years in some smaller movies like Don't Look Up, Causeway, and No Hard Feelings. She's literally been everywhere since 2010, since she really kind of made her like movie. And I'm not saying he's on that rise, but he's on that pace. He's in that direction. Who knows? We didn't expect that to be Jennifer Lawrence, but very possible. It's very, very possible. Gio, 2 of the biggest stars of the past decade were humbled in the past few years. Tom Cruise with Dead Reckoning and Dwayne Johnson with Black Adam. I'm going to say Dwayne Johnson, yes. I'm gonna hold Tom Cruise closer to the vest because I'm gonna slightly agree with you, yes. But the previous Mission Impossible movie made a butt ton of money, and so did all the other Tom Cruise movies. But yes, Dead Reckoning was definitely like a scratch my head moment. It's very, very weird that movie didn't make more money because it was pretty much perfect. So I'm curious on what happens with the next Mission Impossible. Number 8, I think it is. I think. But yes, I agree with Dwayne Johnson. And honestly, he can just stay out of my life. I'm kind of over Dwayne Johnson at the moment. I just, yeah, we could talk about that another day. All right. Let's get into the last part of the show. And this one's going to go very quick. But I mentioned this on last week's episode. I'm going to start recommending either a movie or television show at the end of each episode. Things that I think people would like watching, things that I may be currently watching, or things that have just appeared now on streaming. And this week, I just found out that a show that I really enjoy that was on Cinemax back in the day. I want to look up the actual timeline here. So let me look it up real quick. And I think a lot of people would enjoy it because I feel like it's a very unknown show. But my dad and I watched this. It started in 2013 and it was for 4 seasons on Cinemax. And the reason why this is relevant is because it stars Anthony Starr from The Boys. It stars Homelander. This was his big gig that put him in front of people. And this show is called Banshee. And Banshee is a very interesting television show. It is a very, very interesting show. It's currently available on Max. All 4 seasons are on Max. I've considered doing a rewatch myself. I'm currently finishing a show on Apple right now, so I might do it afterwards. But Banshee stars Anthony Starr, Homelander himself, and I would love to. I'll read this. This is the synopsis from Google. This is what it currently says. A recent paroled master thief assumes the identity of Sheriff Lucas Hood in Banshee, Pennsylvania, where his former lover and partner in crime relocated 2 years ago and reinvented herself as Carrie Hopewell, the wife of the town's prosecutor. As Lucas attempts to reunite with Carrie and keep his past a secret, he resumes his life of crime, even as he's hunted by the shadowy gangsters he betrayed years earlier, including a mob boss who seeks revenge and Carrie for the jewel heist against Lucas and Carrie for the jewel heist that landed Lucas in prison. This is super, super interesting as far as the show go. It deals with neo-Nazis. It deals with the Native American community. And it also deals with heavily armed Amish people. Because Banshee, Pennsylvania is in the center of Amish country. It deals with heavily armed and pretty well-trained Amish people. It's crazy. I'm telling you, man, it is a crazy, like, thrown together show, but it's so well done. So what happens is the first episode is we see we see Anthony Starr's character out of prison, on the run, finding out where his ex-lover is, and this sheriff is coming over from Oregon to take over the role of sheriff in Pennsylvania. He ends up dying, and instead of like reporting it, etc., he takes over the role of Lucas Hood and becomes the sheriff of Banshee. It's crazy. Like, he takes over the role of sheriff and he becomes the sheriff, and he acts as Sheriff Hood. It's crazy, y'all. And I highly recommend it. It's a total wild watch, but it's a fun time. It's incredibly underrated because it was on Cinemax. I guarantee you the majority of people have not even heard of this show. And I'm recommending it, one, because it's now available on Max, but also Anthony Starr, who is Homelander in The Boys, is the leading man. He stars in this show. And if you like The Boys, if you like him as Homelander, most people hate him as Homelander, but if you like his performance as Homelander, you're going to like this show. It's very different. Does not deal with superpowers or anything like that. It's very grounded, bullet to the pavement type of show. Deals with guns and violence and action, and as I mentioned, Native Americans, neo Nazis, and Amish people. So I cannot recommend it enough. And I will definitely keep you guys updated if I check it out. I've considered it. It all just depends on if I'm able to. So Anthony Starr will always be the stray man to me. Andy, what is that? Stray man. Am I missing something? Or was that from some other show or movie? The Stray Man. Or is that what he's called? He's not called that in Banshee, is he? You'll have to let me know. Okay. I do want to talk. Where did it go? John Pierce said Dark Matter is good. John, that is the show I'm actually watching that I mentioned. The show is phenomenal. Phenomenal. Joel Edgerton ×2. Jennifer Connelly. Great mind-bending show. I love the science behind it. Such a cool idea. And very well done visuals as well. Dark Matter is another one that I'd recommend. But I might recommend it when I'm finished with it. But that's a very cool show as well. I'm loving it a lot more than I expected to. All right, everybody. I think that's gonna close out the show for this week. Covered a lot, talked about a lot. We covered House of the Dragon, The Boys, talked about Tony Stark's return, Glen Powell and Hitman, and then I recommended Banshee if you are looking for a brand new TV show. As I usually mention on these, if you're interested, please follow me on all my social media. It's at Qui-Gon Jake everywhere. For everyone watching, the handle you can see down there below, it's 2 N's because someone else took it before I did. And if you're listening to this on audio form, it is QUIGONNNJAKE. That is all over X, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and Threads. I've been trying to post to them all. So for anyone who is heavily involved in one or the other, hopefully you're seeing my stuff. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you guys for joining me, conversing with me. I'm looking forward to doing this on a weekly basis. I mentioned this a lot last week, but we're doing this every week, covering things that I love to talk about, things I want to talk about. And so far we are 2 for 2, and it's been a ride. It's been a very enjoyable ride so far. So thank you guys. I'm off to watch The Acolyte just as Big G is. And I'll talk about it later at a smaller video. But for now, thank you guys so much for joining me. Have a great rest of your evening. Have a great rest of your week. And I will catch you guys next time. Night, guys.